Labdien visiem, and welcome to Latvia Weekly's look back at the top 10 stories of the week. So we're going to go through some of the biggest stories of the week in a kind of a short fashion and talk about them in a little bit less detail than we normally do on the podcast. But you can listen to the podcast. We just did an episode on Thursday. We'll do another episode this coming Thursday if you'd like to hear these stories in more depth. So let's start with number 10. So number 10, you might have gotten a very strange message this week on your WhatsApp from some colleague, from some friend, from some family member, warning about some video that you shouldn't open, that you should be very careful about, and to send that message to everybody else in your contact list. So a lot of group chats got spammed by this message. And for those of you who are fairly savvy with technological things, you know that you should never open up any kind of suspicious video or attachment that you don't recognize. But in this case, this one was fake. This one was not real. It was completely made up. There's no exact word of where the origin of this it's kind of like a chain letter came from, but it does raise questions. Although this one is pretty harmless, what happens if there is some not so harmless information that people are gullible and spread everywhere? Number 9. So speaking of fake news, for those of you who've been in Latvia for a longer amount of time, you might remember that there was one telecom company that pretended that there was this meteorite that crashed in northern Latvia, and it got a lot of people excited. It got a lot of people out into the forest trying to find this meteorite that had crashed. Well, that was a completely made-up story and to gain some publicity, sell their phone service. But this was an actual meteorite that was spotted flying above Latvia, or I should say a meteor, and it was captured by Latvian television, and apparently there was another meteor that some people spotted as well. So hopefully that this is a good sign of things to come. Number 8. So there's been a lot of public-private partnerships going on throughout the world to try to fight the coronavirus, COVID-19. And here in Latvia, the Kalsnava distillery, which you can see is located over in eastern Latvia, kind of on the border between Vidzeme and Latgale, but still firmly in the Vidzeme region. And this is a distillery that normally makes different spirits, but they are producing a disinfectant, just like the Latvia's Balsams company that's doing the same thing as well. So kudos to them, and there's a lot of other companies that are doing similar things like that, and we will see a lot more of that in the near future. Number 7. So bad news for arts institutions such as the Mākslīgā Talpa Fund. This is a fund that is trying to set up a modern art museum here in Latvia, something that's been lacking for many years, because one major contributor to this and other cultural institutions, Jānis, he has announced that due to the closure of gambling halls throughout the country due to COVID-19, he will not be able to fund these different organizations this year. And this is particularly bad news because, just a few years ago, we had the ABLV Bank, which collapsed, and they were also a major patron of the arts of different cultural institutions, and so that's another funding source which has gone away, unfortunately. And Mr. Zuzans, for his credit, he did not criticize the government's decision to close the gambling halls temporarily, but he did say that he didn't think it made any sense to close the online gambling halls, which I would also be inclined to agree with. And this is not a long-term closure of the gambling halls like we've been talking about in Riga, which Riga has been talking about closing all the gambling halls in that city, but this is specifically related to COVID-19. Number 6. So Latvia's government has sold 550 million euros in bonds to finance the different stimulus packages that they have been announcing for small businesses, for private individuals. And these bonds are set to mature in 2026, and there was apparently a very big demand for these bonds. There was, according to the English version of LSM, Latvian Public Media, 700 million euros worth of bonds that were in demand, and not all investors, I guess, got to buy the ones that they wanted to. So, this is good. At least there's some kind of confidence in the Latvian financial system. Number 5. So bad news for rail aficionados like myself. So the plans to electrify Latvian railroads, such as the one between Riga and Daugavpils, or Riga and Rēzekne, which up until now have been diesel only, is canceled. And this is not a major surprise because this project has gone under all kinds of problems the last few years. It's something that a lot of people thought would never actually happen. There was a lot of money from Europe to try to make this happen, and Latvian railways are saying that this money can be used at least for other projects like improving commuter rail service, which I hope materializes into something. Number 4. Speaking of rails and decreasing, so a lot of rail routes have been decreased, so go to PVLV and make sure that whichever rail service that you rely on has not been cut or has not been decreased. Same with regional bus services. Of course, these are to help fight the COVID-19 spread. So more controversial, though, was Rīgas Satiksme, which is the public transit firm in Riga, which runs buses, trolleybuses, trams. They have also cut down the amount of routes, but this has gained a lot of controversy because a lot of people in Riga rely on this to just get wherever they need to go. And decreasing the amount of routes increases the chance that you're going to be packed like a sardine, or as we'd say here in Latvia, sprote or sprat, in a can with a bunch of other people, which is one thing that just in general I don't miss about living in Riga. Number 3, so medics are finally going to be able to get a slight boost in their pay. So there are bonuses that are being planned up to 50% of salaries for different medical workers and 20% salary increases for people working on the front lines of the COVID-19 infection fight. And this is an interesting kind of development because last year, for those of you who are following, there was a big fight over promised increases to doctors and medics and medical workers' salaries, and those did not materialize the way that that Saima had promised them, and there was a big protest about that last year. So at least this is some kind of temporary solution, but no words about a long-term one. Number 2, so speaking of Rīgas Satiksme, so they did a very interesting decision a couple days ago. So they decided to end discounts, which are very, very heavy discounts for monthly passes for certain groups of passengers, such as the elderly, such as students. And these are significant discounts. I mean, you know, at least when I was in Riga, I was able to get a monthly pass for 16 euros as a student, and when you're not a student, it's something like 50 euros. So these are significant discounts. This was a major plan of Mayor Niels Ushakov's, who came into power in the early 2010s, and it's very interesting that now that he, is gone. I think Rīgas Satiksme is going to try to back out of this plan one way or another because it is just not financially sustainable. So it'll be interesting to see if they come back with this. But for now, this is a measure supposedly to fight COVID-19, to try to get less people using the public transportation, but we'll see. And number 1, no surprise, the COVID-19 virus is continuing to spread throughout Latvia. So I'm not going to bother giving you an updated total because by the time you are watching or listening to this, that total is going to be higher than whatever I'm saying right now. But the number is still spreading. It does not seem like Latvia has hit the peak as we hope to do sometime fairly soon. There are new restrictions. For example, it is much more strictly enforced that you cannot be within 2 meters of another person, and groups of more than 2 people, excluding close family or at workplaces, both in public and in private, have been banned. So make sure to follow the English version of LSM, Latvian Public Media, to make sure that you are up to date with the latest restrictions. And that just about does it for this week. So thank you guys so much. I hope this was useful. If you want to hear more, you can listen to the Latvia Weekly podcast, which Otto and I do every single week. You can go to latviaweekly.com, and you can also subscribe to us on Facebook, where we do stories of the day every single day, thanks to Andrew and Carlos. So thanks, everyone, and visu labu visiem.